Hey guys, tonight we're heading far back in time to a place where the stars were sacred, the bricks were baked by sun and sweat, and dreams were carved into clay. You're in Babylon now. The air is thick with heat, dust, and the odd scent of sizzling goat. The streets are narrow and winding, flanked by towering mud brick walls that hold both secrets and echoes. Everything here hums with ancient ambition. Your sandals crunch softly on the packed earth as you walk past vendors hawking barley cakes and bead necklaces. A child rushes by, chased by a scolding grandmother waving a sandal, and to be honest, they kind of do. Babylon was a city of power and pride, designed to impress, not fancy marble or carved stone, just brick. You pass a courtyard where a priest is instructing children in the sacred duties of temple service. One kid is clearly zoning out. The priest doesn't yell. The city claimed to have been founded by the gods themselves. Marduk. The smells of fish, frankincense, warm clay, and roasted onion waft through the air. Even now, as the stars begin to blink through the haze and fires flicker on rooftops, the city murmurs, workers head home, priests prepare night offerings, lovers whisper from window to window. They're not exactly sleep scents, but oddly comforting. You sit for a moment on a bench near a canal, water trickles softly beside you. Somewhere, someone is singing in Akkadian a lullaby or a prayer. It's hard to tell. The two were often the same. The high god of order, slaying chaos and building a city in its place. A poetic origin story, sure, but also very on brand. Soft, sun-baked, unremarkable, yet carrying a weight that echoes across centuries. Dreams built in clay, baked by fire, and meant to last forever. The Babylonians saw their entire civilization as a delicate arrangement against chaos. The city was more than buildings, it was ritual, routine, regulation. Even your dreams could be state business. Here, he just raises an eyebrow, the kind of eyebrow that can summon divine wrath, or at least a really unpleasant chore involving goat dung. Mud brick mostly, with the occasional glazed panel for flair. On the rooftops, people unroll mats to catch the breeze. Ancient sources talk it up like it was the New York City of its day. But modern archaeologists squint at the ruins and go, maybe more like Fresno with ambitions. What's clear, though, is that Babylon felt like the center of the world, if not because of its actual size, then certainly because of the myth it spun around itself. Kids chase each other with fig branches while old men sit back, sipping watered wine and muttering about how Nebuchadnezzar II is definitely overcompensating with that new temple wing. It's a city that rose from dust, by dust, for dust, and yet it works. Tall ziggurats, rectangular homes, and winding alleys all slot together in a surprisingly elegant chaos. The bricks aren't just building blocks, they're memory. Some of them still bear the stamp of kings. Nebuchadnezzar, built this, because of course he did. Even the gates were propaganda, roaring at visitors. Yes, we built this. Yes, you're impressed. Babylon may sound dreamy, but the heat will bake your skin in an hour, and one wrong word to the wrong priest could land you in a pit with a suspiciously well-fed lion. You probably wouldn't survive a week. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Two men argue over the price of a reed basket, while a scribe nearby scribbles furiously onto a clay tablet with his reed stylus. It's loud, alive, and oddly familiar, minus the camels, maybe. But don't get too comfortable, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through the Ishtar Gate. It is enormous, deep blue with rows of gold-glazed lions prancing along its walls, like they own the place. As you pass beneath the arches, the heat shifts. Shade brings a strange silence, broken only by the muffled footfalls of guards in sandals and the hiss of distant fountains. The Euphrates River winds lazily nearby, feeding canals and glistening irrigation ditches that make all this lush life possible. Without it, Babylon would be just another spot of cracked earth in a vast, sunburned desert. Everywhere you look, there's brick. Babylon is a dream made solid, a giant manifestation of ambition, and, as with all dreams, it walks the line between grandeur and absurdity. Evening starts to roll in slowly, turning the city gold. Historians still argue whether Babylon was ever as impressive as its reputation claims. And what a myth it was. Take a breath. You're in the heart of something old and stubbornly alive. Babylon never sleeps, and through it all, brick holds everything in place. You wake early, or maybe you never quite slept. It's hard to say in a city that begins murmuring before sunrise. The breeze is still cool, barely carrying with it the scent of ash, sweat, And something baking. A low horn echoes across the rooftops. Somewhere, a temple is stirring. Car theft today. The code laid out property rights, trade regulations, family rules, wages, even how to rent a donkey without getting sued. It tried to be fair, in a very eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth sort of way. And yes, that's literally where the phrase comes from. Section 196. If you're counting, Hammurabi's code was class-conscious in the extreme. There's little evidence that judges stood in front of the slab reading line by line. Her fingers are dyed red from henna, and her eyes track a boy trying to sneak a pastry. He grabs one, she whacks him with a spoon. Justice served. No need for a basalt monolith this time. It might have been more of a threat than a textbook, but even as a monument, it sent a clear message. Order is divine. Obey or else. Noblemen paid fines. Slaves got whipped. The city calls. Hammurabi's voice fades behind you. Echoing through the bricks, someone's behind on their grain quota. You wouldn't want to be them, and paid tax meant confiscated property, or worse, being pressed into labor hauling bricks for a temple you'll never pray in. Women had some protections, but if you were accused of being a bad wife, in the shade of a courtyard, a scribe is reciting parts of the code to a group of sleepy apprentices. It's not warm, it's not welcoming, but it is steady. A promise carved into rock that justice, however flawed, exists. They knew what to expect mostly. Hammurabi claimed it was about justice, so the strong may not harm the weak. Whether that held true is up for debate, but even modern legal systems owe this dusty slab a tip of the hat. He drones like he's said it 100 times. Lean against a mud brick wall and listen to the sounds around you. A woman barters for cloth. A child recites his multiplication tables using pebbles. Somewhere, a priest is chanting. It's the kind of structured chaos only possible in a society with rules written in stone. Maybe he has. You catch a line. If a builder constructs a house and it collapses, killing the owner, the builder shall be put to death. The boy nearest you gulps. He wanted to be an architect. You might be tossed into a river to see if the gods thought you were innocent. Spoiler, they usually didn't. A fine, maybe prison. In Hammurabi's world, death. False accusations, death. Refusing to fix your leaky dam? You guessed it, death. Babylonian law wasn't exactly subtle. You shuffle toward the center of town. You don't know it yet, but you're headed toward one of the most influential stones in human history. His code starts with a divine flex. He was chosen by the gods to bring justice and order, and you're sweating through your tunic. You glance at the stele and think, better refund that guy before I get my hands chopped off. Then he carved it into rock so everyone could see it. Even if, let's be honest, most people couldn't read it. But the image at the top told the story clearly enough. Hammurabi standing before Shamash, the sun god, receiving the laws like a divine delivery. Talk about a power move. Not a sacred idol, not a royal tomb, but a slab. A massive black basalt stele, nearly 8 feet tall, carved top to bottom in tight, wedge-shaped script. It stands like a judge among men, silent and unmoving. This is Hammurabi's code. Let's be real, your modern legal system has nothing on this. Still, it wasn't just about punishment. Hammurabi wasn't the first to write laws, but he was the first to brag about it this hard. As you wander the plaza, imagine being a merchant here. You've got a cart full of fish, 2 angry customers, yelling about spoiled goods, not that justice was equally applied. Historians still argue whether the code was actually used in courts or just symbolic PR. You pass a woman unrolling a reed mat and laying out barley cakes for sale. She nods at you with a tight smile. Nearby, a tax collector scratches his chin as he checks a list of names. A donkey tied beside him munches noisily on straw. The collector frowns. You move on. And yet, for all its brutal edges, there's a strange comfort in the code's rigidity. People knew the rules. Take a moment now, and Babylon thrives because of it. One more glance at the code, still standing tall and silent. No guards, no scribes, just law and consequence, standing in plain view. You turn and step back into the dusty street. The scent hits you first, burning oils, singed feathers, and something uncomfortably like hot blood. It's not exactly what you'd call inviting, but you're not here for comfort. You're approaching one of Babylon's many sacred precincts, and things are about to get ceremonial. The temple complex looms before you, more fortress than sanctuary. A priest chants in Sumerian, a language even most Babylonians didn't fully understand by now. But it's not about comprehension. It's about connection, rhythm, ritual. Others suggest a more cooperative relationship, like co-workers who smile politely while secretly plotting each other's downfall. You could recite a grocery list if it sounded holy enough. Here, a few elderly women tend to votive statues, tiny clay figurines left by worshippers as permanent stand-ins. There's a staircase so steep and narrow, you wonder how many priests fell down it over the centuries. You climb anyway. The bricks are sun-warmed. Below, the temple hums with activity. A goat bleats nervously. Someone's getting a promotion to sacrificial offering. Candles flicker. Chants rise and fall like breathing. Your hands picking up the ancient heat as you steady yourself. Your legs tremble not just from the climb, but from the weight of what surrounds you. This isn't just religion. It's a machine. A structure so ingrained in daily life. It decides who marries whom. When you can plant crops. Children play with knuckle bones. A woman balances a jar of milk on her head like it's second nature. A dog naps in the shade of a broken statue. The sacred and the mundane are never far apart in Babylon. Even whether it's a good day to cut your hair. At the top, there's no breathtaking view, just another platform. Perhaps once the site of a shrine. Now lost to time. But up here, above the city noise, with the wind teasing your robe and the desert stretching out endlessly beyond the river, you feel it, that whisper of sacred ambition. Past boys laughing as they chase each other with palm fronds. Past a priest who smells faintly of onions and goat blood and doesn't seem to mind at all. Of a people trying to touch the heavens with mud and willpower. For my neighbor to finally shut up. Okay, maybe not that last one, but you wouldn't be surprised. Think of them like divine voicemail. Hi Marduk, it's me, Leela. Please heal my mother's cough. In a world of floods, famines, and unpredictable kings, the gods remained predictable, at least if you followed the rules. Light the incense, say the chant, make the offering, follow the calendar. Don't offend anyone celestial. Simple, right? Left a sheep liver in offering, hope that helps. Thanks, which, come to think of it, someone probably did. Walls rise in imposing layers, and at its heart, a ziggurat, the great stepped pyramid, reaches for the sky like an ancient skyscraper, made of baked mud and determination. You'd think a temple is just for worship, but no, they were banks, storage centers, schools, and political machines. Need to borrow barley? Talk to the priests. Want to lease some farmland? Or maybe it's just an ancient raffle ticket. Hard to say. You slip it into your pouch anyway. Souvenir from a long-forgotten universe. Guess who owns half of it? That's right, the gods, or more accurately, their very human representatives. This one's dedicated to Marduk, the city's chief deity. Not just a god, mind you. The god, king of order, slayer of chaos serpents, basically, the boss of bosses. You pass through a narrow gate into the temple courtyard. The ground is a mosaic of packed clay and straw, darkened from centuries of incense, ash, and spilled offerings. A priest walks past, draped in layers of wool and beads, face stern, eyes distant. His expression says, "Yes, I've seen goat entrails today. No, I won't be talking about it. The air is heavier here. Sacred, sure, but also smoky." You glimpse attendants preparing an altar, flower garlands, polished bronze tools, bowls of dates and honey, a terrified chicken. Religion here is not metaphorical. It's practical. The gods must be fed, appeased, flattered, and sometimes bribed. You kneel awkwardly, watching a procession. Musicians strum lyres and beat on small drums. The rhythm is hypnotic, repetitive, sleepily divine. Temple life is more than ceremonies, though these places are economic powerhouses. Historians still argue whether Babylonian priests held more power than kings. Some scholars claim temple bureaucracies ran parallel to royal authority, sometimes in competition. You duck under a linen awning stretched over a quiet side court. Some votives have wide eyes and clasped hands. Others have inscriptions scratched into them in careful cuneiform. For health, for justice. Behind the ziggurat, you sit for a moment, and for all the blood and bureaucracy, there's a kind of peace here. You're handed a small clay token by an acolyte passing by. It's marked with a seal, proof you participated in the ritual. You descend the stairs slowly, and maybe, just maybe, it gives you a feeling that someone out there up in the stars or deep in the earth is listening. Outside the temple, life continues. As the sun rises higher and the heat thickens like stew, you walk on, past worshippers with serious faces, and you wonder, what would your votive statue have said? The scent of yeast, dust, and something vaguely nutty draws you away from the temple and down a quieter street. You ray heading into a district less sacred, but just as central to Babylonian life, where food gets made, beer gets brewed, and early risers are rewarded with the good honey cakes before they sell out. The baker is already elbow deep in dough. You pick barley, mostly because you have no idea what emmer is. He hands you a warm, dense cake, slightly burnt at the edges and faintly sweet. It's chewy, earthy, and somehow both gritty and comforting. Not bad for a city that's mostly made of dirt. Slapping flat cakes onto the hot walls of the oven with practiced rhythm. The dough hisses, bubbles, then puffs gently as it bakes. Imagine being a Babylonian hipster baker, food mart status. She hums as she stirs a massive pot with a wooden paddle nearly as tall as she is. The smell is intense: yeast, salt, old fruit, maybe regret. Poor laborers gnawed on dry cakes and onions. Wealthy families dined on lamb, figs, wine, and imported spices from Elam or Anatolia. You could measure a person's rank by their spice rack, and everyone ate with their hand. Spoons existed, but mostly for soups or rituals. Napkins, the rhythm of the city pulses on. Ovens roar, vendors shout, a chicken escapes and is promptly recaptured. Life, in all its dusty glory. That's what the back of your tunic is for. Breakfast leads to market snacks, which lead to afternoon stews, then to communal dinners under the stars. Everyone knows their place at the table, whether it's with pickled turnips or roast lamb, and no one eats alone unless they choose to. Oh, this one small batch, slow baked on river stones, fermented with sacred yeast. The day is warming up, and Babylon is just getting started. It's breakfast time in Babylon, and it's surprisingly savory. A teenage boy buys two and runs off, crunching noisily. You shudder. The markets bloom with noise and smells: dried fish, clay pots, bruised pomegranates, and a goat that refuses to move. You find a shady spot beside a spice vendor and sit. First batch is free, she jokes. It's tied to the goddess Ninkasi, who supposedly gifted it to humans out of divine generosity, or maybe divine curiosity, about how fast humans could get tipsy. Workers were often paid in beer, just chewing, nodding, the occasional raised eyebrow. It's a kind of sleepy intimacy you recognize even 3,000 years later. And festivals featured communal drinking straight from giant jars, using shared straws. Sanitary, no. Social, absolutely. Smudging clay tablets with greasy fingers. One of them reads aloud, something about grain shipments from the Temple District. His friend interrupts, correcting a number. They argue quietly, then shrug and keep eating. Bureaucracy waits for no man. Or lunch break. You sip, and it's like drinking liquid sordo. Honestly, you've had worse. Protein is protein, you suppose. You follow your nose to a bakery, a simple open-air affair with a clay oven sunk into the ground. Its wide mouth glowing red-orange. Barley or emmer, he grunts, without looking up. Breakfast here isn't bacon and eggs, it's more like bread, dates, onions, and if you're lucky, some kind of soft cheese or dried fish. But the real star of the morning, beer. Yes, beer for breakfast. Balancing baskets on their shoulders, muttering about garlic prices. One of them peels an onion with her teeth, then offers you a bite. You decline, politely. In Babylon, beer isn't just a beverage, it's a food group. Thick, soupy, low-alcohol beer that you practically chew. It's made from fermented bread, served in large clay jars, and sipped through long straws to avoid the floating clumps. Recipes were rare, and most written food records were transactional. So-and-so delivered 30 jars of oil and 5 lambs, but cuneiform tablets from nearby regions do mention garlic-heavy stews, chickpea mush, roasted pigeon, and a kind of early ketchup made from fermented fish guts. Yum! You try a mouthful and instantly understand why they called it the drink of the gods. It tastes like soggy cereal with a kick. Not exactly refreshing, but it gets the job done. Across the alley, a woman sells fried locusts on skewers. You pass by a group of servants returning from the market. Historians still argue whether Babylonian cuisine was actually enjoyable or merely edible. One quirky tablet even lists a menu of over 20 different bread types: honey bread, date bread, sesame bread, bread shaped like hearts. But meals weren't just about eating. You stop to watch a brewer at work. Her courtyard is a mess of clay vats, piles of soggy bread, and fermenting jars. She sees you watching and grins. Beer is sacred here. As midday creeps closer, the streets grow busier. A young couple nearby eats a meal together: lentils, flatbread, a sour yogurt sauce, and something wrapped in fig leaves. No one speaks. You notice a group of scribes eating nearby. You close your eyes for a moment. The sun warms your arms. Somewhere, a flute plays lazily. And yet, even amid this chaos, there's a kind of order. Food is structured by tradition. You rise slowly, breadcrumbs on your lap and the aftertaste of ancient beer in your mouth. Time to see what the stars have to say about it. By now, the heat is settling into the bricks like a second skin. You wipe your brow with a piece of linen and follow a line of pilgrims heading toward a quieter part of the city, less crowded, more mysterious. A low, humming tension hangs in the air, like the city itself is waiting. Their robes are embroidered with tiny celestial symbols, moons, stars, zigzag lightning bolts. Yep. You've stumbled into a hepatoscopy session, ancient liver reading. They carefully examine each lobe, marking anomalies, grooves, or bulges, and comparing them to a reference model usually made of clay, labeled like a diagram from a very unsettling medical textbook. One of them clutches a clay tablet, as carefully as if it were a newborn lamb. These are the official diviners of the state. Some scholars point to their stunning mathematical models and surprisingly accurate lunar calendars. It's bright now, nearly white with heat, but soon the stars will emerge, and with them, the real action. Babylonian astrologers mapped constellations with painstaking precision. They didn't just admire the stars, they read them. Today's reading: Mars has appeared in the west. Expect sudden deaths and angry goats. You look nervously at a goat tied to a cart. It glares back. Venus appearing before sunrise might mean peace. Inside, a woman lights a tiny oil lamp and places a figurine shaped like a tongue, praying, perhaps, for her child to speak. They shine gently above, same stars, same sky, but down here in Babylon, they whisper secrets, if you know how to listen. Another leaves a small jar of honey with a prayer for stomach troubles. Divine diagnostics weren't limited to the stars. Medicine and magic walked hand in hand, often indistinguishable. A red-tinted moon, famine, fever? Could be heat stroke, or maybe a demon of the north wind. Best to cover your bases with a poultice and a chant. The spells themselves often sounded like lullabies, designed to soothe both patient and spirit. You hear one murmured now, rhythmic, repetitive, strangely calming. Mercury rising while Jupiter descends. Lamps flicker. A priest begins a skywatch on the temple roof, stylus ready. You climb to join him. The stars emerge, one by one, over the Euphrates. Time to move your wedding. Others highlight the sheer number of omens that involve oddly specific scenarios. Like where astrologers often gathered to record omens and compile lists, the temple is quieter than the main ziggurat, more contemplative. A Babylonian star chart, complete with constellation names you don't recognize, and yet, you can almost feel it, the human impulse to look up and find meaning, to turn the unknowable sky into a map of possibility. Inside, rows of shelves hold clay tablets etched with predictions, rituals, and observations. It's like a dusty oracle's library, and it smells like must, ink, and ambition. If a woman gives birth to a child with 2 heads and it rains, eyes closed in concentration, the priest is reciting omens from memory. Sometimes the gods just send dreams, vivid, strange, deeply symbolic, and if you're important enough, someone will analyze it for you. Dreamt of a lion eating figs on a boat? Probably means you're about to gain land. Dreamt of your teeth falling out while riding a crocodile? Might want to delay that real estate purchase. Every line starting with if, followed by things like, if a fox enters the city, the king's counselor will die. You're not sure how foxes got into the city to begin with, but now you kind of want one to try. Frogs. The harvest will fail, which, to be fair, seems like a safe bet regardless. They don't predict the future exactly, they interpret it. People nod solemnly. Babylonian omens come from everywhere. The stars, the direction of smoke, the way oil swirls in water, or even how a dog sneezes. No, seriously, canine sneezes had entire omen categories. One bark, good, 2 barks, worrisome. Barking while pooping, prepare for a flood. One guy looks like he might cry. It's unclear whether his business or his marriage just got cursed. But either way, it's not a great day for him. Translate it. Rearrange it like a puzzle designed by gods with a dark sense of humor. Not for rain or royal decree, but for a sign. Here in Babylon, everything is a sign. Is the king's military campaign blessed? Should that merchant open a new shop by the river? Does your mother-in-law's persistent cough mean doom for the family? Ask the liver. You duck into a shaded courtyard where a group of men gather in a tight circle. You kneel beside them just in time to see the priest unwrap a fresh goat liver on a silver tray. To the untrained eye, it's just a slippery piece of meat. To the Babylonians, it's divine feedback. You try not to look squeamish. The chief diviner mutters something about an unfavorable left lobe. And it's not just liver that gets the prophetic treatment. Historians still argue whether Babylonian astrology was more science or superstition. You look up at the sky, you find yourself near the temple of Nabu, god of wisdom and writing. A young apprentice scribbles notes while listening to an older priest dictate slowly. In one corner, You spot a clay model of the sky and ancient planisphere, of course. Not every omen is subtle. You pass a public notice board, a slab of clay with cuneiform impressions baked into it. Down a narrow lane, you catch sight of a shrine to Gula, goddess of healing, and every ailment had both a physical and spiritual cause. As twilight creeps in, the city's mood shifts, people speak more softly, and you lie back, staring at constellations with names long forgotten by most of the world: the furrow, the scimitar, the plow. By nightfall, the streets are quieter, still warm, still busy, but softened by the dark. The stalls close one by one. Street musicians pack away their lyres. The scent of roasted lamb, sesame cakes, and onions still lingers in the air like a half-forgotten dream. You find yourself near the Euphrates River, its waters black and slow under the moonlight. Babylon was built around this river. You watch from behind a stone pillar as a small procession wades into the shallows. They're quiet, solemn, one by one. They drop small effigies into the water, tiny clay figures, some shaped like people, others like scorpions, dogs, or distorted human faces. These are apotreic figurines, used to trap and carry away demons, illnesses, or curses. It nourishes the fields, fills the city's cisterns, and carries both trade and gossip along its muddy veins. It's the artery of an empire. Tonight, the river hosts another kind of ritual. Spells chanted in corners, amulets worn on the ankle, the neck, or sewn into clothing, and most of all, rituals, actions that were less about belief and more about balance. The healer murmurs a protective incantation in a sing-song voice, while rubbing a foul-smelling salve on the man's feet. The Babylonians weren't fumbling in the dark. They simply had a different light. Then, the healer lights a bundle of reeds and walks in a circle, smoke trailing from the embers. The flames flicker green for a moment. That seems to mean something. It's clad in gold foil, stone inlays glittering like fire in the lamplight. Once a year, during the Akitu festival, this statue would be paraded through the streets and into a separate chamber, where the king would confess his sins, be slapped by a high priest, and if the gods were satisfied, receive a sign that order was restored for another year. The healer nods. From here, you can see it all: the golden roofs, the bustling river, the tangled streets lit by flickering lamps. You can even hear the distant thrum of a drum, a rhythmic heartbeat pulsing through the city's night. Makes a mark on a wax tablet. But for now, for this moment, you sit on warm stone beneath a Babylonian moon, and everything feels complete, and returns to his chant. Dust, fire, salt, and something sweeter, dates maybe, or the memory of prayers. The river carries them off, swirling them into its eternal drift. For the Babylonians, evil was sticky, clinging to people, objects, and even places, so they developed systems to absorb it. Figurines, buried under thresholds, everything had to be kept in balance. Shadowed structure, the Asagila temple, sacred to Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. It's hard to describe just how vast this place is. Torches crackle. The air smells of incense and damp stone. A line of initiates carries platters of offerings, dates, beer, garlic, and honey cakes. Behind them, others hold cages with doves and one very unhappy goat, larger than most city blocks, with layers of courtyards, halls, and storage rooms. There's a garden inside, fed by canal water, where priests raise sacred plants used in rituals. Shelves line the walls with jars of dried bark, bitter roots, blue-green copper salts. There are clay bowls full of teeth, feathers, and something that looks suspiciously like a bat wing, where a woman kneels before a small clay statue, possibly of Lamashtu, the terrifying she-demon blamed for miscarriages and infant death. But oddly enough, people worshipped her too. Better to appease a monster than ignore it. It was cosmic reset, a way of reminding the most powerful man in the empire that he was, ultimately, a servant to Marduk, that no matter how great Babylon became, it could always be undone by arrogance, neglect, or divine whim. In Babylon, coexistence with danger was often wiser than confrontation. Light and dark, order and chaos, human and divine. This wasn't just superstition, it was infrastructure. You step back into the city proper and pass by a household shrine. Further ahead, you see a healer's home, part herbalist, part magician. A patient sits slouched in a chair, his skin pale, eyes watery. This is not science as you know it, but it is knowledge hard-earned, layered, and codified over generations. And in this city, that light came from the gods. You find yourself before a massive. Inside, you hear chants echoing in Sumerian, and older, holy language by this point, reserved for ceremony. You follow a side corridor and glimpse the statue of Marduk, not the public idol, but the private one kept in the inner sanctuary. Yes, you heard right. The king got slapped, but that slap was more than ritual violence, and the Babylonians had reason to fear that. You exit the temple and climb a stone stair to a viewing platform. On one of the ziggurats' lower tiers, it feels eternal, immense, unshakable. But you know better. History tells us Babylon won't last. Its walls will fall. Its towers will burn. Its gods will be carted away as war trophies. You breathe in the desert air, and you wonder, when the gods finally stopped listening, did anyone notice right away? Morning returns with heat and clamor. Babylon never really sleeps, only lowers its voice. As the sun climbs, so does the noise. Babylon, after all, is more than a city. It's the plug in the drain of the world's trade routes. Someone's shouting in Elamite. A merchant argues over customs tax. But beyond the noise, something more subtle is happening. And every day, something new slips through. These are not for public reading. And Babylon is a knowledge sinkhole. They rave for the scribes of the temple land. Some are in languages almost no one in Babylon can read anymore. Stylus tucked into his sash into the cool silence of a building unlike any other. The Temple of Nabu, god of writing and wisdom. Shelves of clay, a literal library, older than the word itself. Here are medical texts, celestial charts, hymns, royal decrees, contracts, omens, greased by ritual and driven by questions about how the world works, star names, and notes on planetary movement. He's tracking Jupiter, known as Mulbabar, the bright white star. The Babylonians could predict eclipses with astonishing accuracy. They tracked Venus cycles, plotted planetary retrogrades, and named constellations. They're trying to align the phases of the moon with the festival date. The idea of 360 degrees in a circle, and dividing the day into 24 hours. The river still flows brown and slow. The goats still bleat in the distance. But now you know. Beneath it all is the thrum of a mind at work. Their debate is technical, filled with numbers and symbols, and the occasional barked curse. They built something few other societies ever would. No parchment, no quills, no ink. We can still read them 3,000 years later. He's seen 100 apprentices like them. Some will quit, one or two may go blind from staring too long at etched stone. But just one might someday write the omen that warns a king, or record a celestial pattern that outlives an empire. Just clay, reed, and patience. They use a base 60 number system, sexagesimal, meaning their math is dizzyingly precise. Dream interpretations, recipes, and invocations of gods long fallen out of favor. It is all here, preserved in baked mud, and lines of wedge-shaped writing, cuneiform, hammer against bronze, mimicking their master's voice and pretending to interpret dreams. One says, if you dream of a broken cup, blinking at the sudden brightness, for a moment, the streets of Babylon feel different, not just louder, but heavier, dense with thought, memory, and invention. It means you will spill secrets. The other replies, if you dream of your teeth falling out, it means you'll argue with your wife, shouting in Akkadian. The script is dense, each symbol pressed with careful certainty. Some of these were written 300 years ago. Others may be copies of older texts, copied by scribes copying scribes who copied other scribes long dead. Layers of voices, layers of time, the bray of donkeys, the splash of water over tiled courtyards. But today is not an ordinary day. Today, a new shipment arrives at the northern gate. Caravans from as far away as Anatolia, Persia, and the Indus Valley. You walk toward the gate where dust and tension hang thick in the air. Guards in bronze helmets push back the crowd. The goods being unloaded include not just cloth and metals, but scrolls long, looped cylinders of dried palm fronds and clay tablets wrapped in straw. This is the unseen world of knowledge traffic. You follow one of the scribes draped in a linen tunic. Inside, you find something remarkable. Rows of tablets. You run your fingers across one slab. At a table nearby, two scribes argue over an astronomical calculation. This is not some primitive backwater. This is not superstition wrapped in mud. This is a machine of reason. You move deeper into the scriptorium and find another scribe etching a diagram of the heavens. A large circle with intersecting lines. In fact, it's from Babylon that we inherit the zodiac. You sit for a moment, watching him work, and for all the things they didn't know, for all the mistakes of civilization that wrote its memory in stone and stars. Then you hear something unexpected, laughter. Two young apprentices are goofing off in the corner. The master catches them and scolds them with a smile. You leave the temple and walk back into the sun. The walls are still made of mud brick, not a single mind, but a hive, humming with questions. What do the stars mean? What happens after death? Why does the Nile flood? Why does my child cough at night? Babylon didn't answer all of them, But it asked, and it recorded, and it preserved those records in clay so dense. Some of those answers are wrong. Some are frighteningly close to modern understanding. But all of them carry a voice, a human voice. And tonight, when the moon rises again over the Euphrates, someone else will be asking, what does it mean when the moon turns red? What will the gods do next? What will tomorrow bring? And someone somewhere in Babylon will write it down. Evening in Babylon arrives like the hush before a deep breath. The harsh angles of the sun soften into warm amber, painting the mud brick walls with shades of bronze and gold. Smoke curls gently from rooftop hearths. This isn't where scribes or bricklayers live. These are the homes of nobles, priests, high merchants, and the royal administrators. And even among Babylon's mud brick monotony, these dwellings stand out. Tall walls, carved door lintels, tiled floors, painted beams here. Luxury hums like a quiet promise. The day's heat still clings to stone and skin, but there's a change in the air cooler, almost forgiving. A mix of priests and bricklayers climbs the sides. Ritual maintenance, yes, but also real repairs. Because if the ziggurat crumbles, the world might follow. You're standing near the city's southern precincts now, close to the quarter where the elite reside. The tale of Tiamat and her monstrous horde defeated by the young god. Every night, that myth is performed, not just told, but relived in gesture and fire and song. But even the rich can't escape the rituals of dusk. On the docks, workers unload the last cargo of the day: jars of sesame oil, amphorae of wine. A caged monkey from the Indus, clucking nervously. One says, it could mean Elam is preparing for war, because whether or not the gods are real, the belief in them is, and it's everywhere. It flows through the bricks, rides on incense smoke. You eavesdrop, whispers through the reed flutes, played at funerals. A procession passes by, priests in long robes, faces painted, carrying small statues on platforms of wood and gold. The Babylonians are trying to decode reality itself. Somewhere, a woman sings a lullaby in Sumerian, an older language, almost extinct, but still kept alive in liturgy and cradle songs. But his roots go back to Enlil and even older gods before him. They build with bricks, but inside the temples are relics of stone. Even their legal code, the famous Code of Hammurabi, is based on precedent, not innovation, but not through logic as we know it. Instead, through divine semiotics, reading the universe like a god might, symbol by symbol, event by event. They chant in low, vibrating tones, moving toward the central ziggurat of Marduk. Children stop their games. Vendors halt mid-sale. Somewhere in the dark, a baby wails, a prostitute laughs. A scribe closes his tablet case, and above you, the stars keep moving, silent, ancient, mathematical. They begin talking about portents, omens that predict the fates of kings, cities, even floods. They speak in dense language, omens codified in tablets, drawn from celestial movement, animal entrails, dreams, deformities in newborns. Maybe you just witnessed a moment of real historical consequence, an idea forming that will later shape a king's decisions. Or maybe it's a joke. In Babylon, even jokes are written in clay. Even the nobles at their wine-slicked balconies turn to watch. Religion in Babylon is not passive. It is procedural, daily, essential. Gods are not omnipresent, but require maintenance, attention, and constant reaffirmation. This is data, accumulated over centuries, each incident recorded with obsessive precision. In the year King X died, a goat was born with 2 heads. In the same month, there was a lunar eclipse. Patterns, repetitions, warnings. Inside, offerings are being arranged: bread, beer, honey, dates, and a carved figurine dipped in oil. The figurine represents a foreign king. Its placement in this ritual suggests a request to Marduk. Let him stumble. Let Babylon rise. If the temple goes quiet, the gods go silent, and that could mean disaster. You follow the procession to the foot of the Edemenenki ziggurat, a massive, stair-step structure rising into the twilight. Its name means house of the foundation of heaven and earth, and it dominates the city's skyline. It's not just a religious building, it's Babylon's spine. Legend claims that it once soared to nearly 90 meters, though today the top is obscured by scaffolds. At the base, a chamber glows with torchlight. The priests begin chanting again. They're invoking not just Marduk, but his narrative, the great myth of order over chaos. You feel something old and massive settle in your chest. Not belief, necessarily, but awe. And that belief is binding Babylon together. After the ritual, you wander to the riverside. The Euphrates reflects the moon in jagged ripples. Nearby, 2 scholars are drinking watered beer, deep in conversation. If Mercury disappears behind the moon tomorrow, or, says the other, smiling wryly, it means the gods are bored. They laugh. but their tone turns serious. This is not superstition to them. It's chilling, in a way. One scholar pulls out a tablet and scratches a quick note. The torches begin to dim. Dogs bark in alleyways. You realize something. Babylon is built on layers of inheritance. They speak Akkadian now, but still sing in Sumerian. They worship Marduk in Babylon. The past is not a memory. It's a manual. And everyone peasant, priest, or prince has a role to play in copying it forward. You rise and begin walking back into the maze of streets. Smoke from cooking fires makes your eyes sting. They are watching, always watching. And down below, Babylon watches back. The machinery of power, courts, crime, and control in Babylon. By the time dawn glows faint behind the ziggurat towers, the city is already stirring, not just with the sound of laborers opening their stalls or women lighting fires for baking bread, but with the slow rumble of law in motion. And here in Babylon, law is not just an idea, it's a physical force. It is carved, signed, sealed in clay, and delivered with a whip. Outside one of them, a line of people has already formed. A thin man with a donkey argues with a woman clutching a broken clay pot. Behind them stands a veiled girl, trembling, flanked by two older men, her uncles, perhaps. You walk along the eastern quarter toward a small plaza bordered by administrative buildings. They're here for judgment, and justice in Babylon is a public affair. Inside, the courtroom is dimly lit but formal. A clay bench holds the judge's appointed men, literate, often from the temple elite. Their job isn't to invent justice, it's to find it buried in precedent, in the hundreds of laws that define every possible outcome. Most famously, these laws were codified by Hammurabi nearly a century earlier. His black basalt stele still stands tall in the temple quarter, showing him receiving laws directly from Shamash, the sun god of justice. The message is clear. These laws are not human inventions. They're divine instructions, and they cover everything. If a man steals an ox, restitution or death. If a builder makes a house and it collapses, killing the owner, the builder is executed, legitimate child or not. Do farmers argue over a sliver of field next to the irrigation canal? The judge calls for the original contract. Stored in the temple archive hundreds of tiny tablets bundled together by season and district. Merchant or craftsman? It's dated 17 years prior and includes witness names. Boundary markers: a fig tree, a painted stone. Babylonian justice is personal, emotional, rooted in the idea that a broken world must be constantly rebalanced, that even the most minor wrong, a misweighed loaf of bread, can ripple out into divine disfavor. And the exact quantity of barley exchanged. One farmer is furious, the other smug. A man convicted of theft is being escorted through the street. He has been whipped and his hands are bound. Crowds part around him. Some throw curses. One boy spits. There's no formal prison system in Babylon. Punishment is either swift and public or, in rare cases, results in enslavement or exile. A name alone doesn't decide. Another bursts into tears. Dry, layered with shelves made of reed and brick. Thousands of clay tablets lie here, sorted by subject, land deeds, loan agreements, ritual prescriptions, births and deaths, even weather patterns. The teacher doesn't flinch. This is how Babylon trains its bureaucrats, not with kindness, but with consistency. What matters is what's written on the tablet. Babylonian law is also weirdly precise, even bureaucratically generous for a Bronze Age society. And the price of barley in the month of Nisanu. If a wife is caught in adultery, she may be drowned unless her husband pardons her. If a merchant ships grain and shortchanges the warehouse owner, fines, lashes, or worse. Their styluses click and scratch on clay, etching wedge-shaped cuneiform into square tablets. They're copying old contracts, myths, king lists, even curses. They won't find golden crowns or gleaming palaces. They'll find broken bricks and millions of tablets, dusty and brown, but still legible. But it's not just about punishment. Contracts must be signed in front of witnesses, still arguing over sheep, still writing their world into permanence. Debts have interest rates, adoption, marriage, even wet nursing are all regulated with stunning clarity. Slaves can buy freedom. Women can own property and initiate divorce. In Babylon, law doesn't just maintain order, it structures identity. Are you free or slave? One case being heard today involves a dispute over land boundaries. A scribe runs off to find it. When he returns, he reads it aloud. The judge delivers his verdict. The tablets have spoken. Outside, another form of law takes shape. You might expect a city this legalistic to feel cold, but it doesn't. Because here's what Babylonians believe. If justice fails, the gods withdraw. And when the gods withdraw, the rivers flood or dry up. The crops die. The enemy invades, so they judge, and they punish, and they record everything. Later, you visit the scribal school, where young boys, never girls, are learning the backbone of Babylonian law writing. A teacher reads out loud, "If a man bears false witness in a trial and it is proven, he shall be put to death." The boys repeat it over and over. One of them drops his stylus. Later still, you're granted rare entry into a record vault cool, and it hits you. This isn't just a city of temples or walls or ziggurats. It's a city of documents, of record keeping so obsessive, it has accidentally preserved its soul for millennia. When archaeologists dig here, thousands of years later, and on those tablets, they'll read about the thefts, the divorces, the border disputes. They'll hear the voices of men and women long dead, still begging for justice. That's Babylon, a kingdom of clay, but also, somehow, a kingdom of memory. Ashes and echoes, the fall of Babylon, and the dream of immortality. It happened slowly at first. Not with fire, not with invaders, though both will come in time, but with silence. A drop in temple donations, a shift in river flow, a murmur among the scribes. The omens are unclear. And then, over decades, the greatest city in the world begins to forget what made it so. You are standing now in the twilight of Babylon. It's still massive, still grand. The gates still shimmer with blue-glazed bricks. Priests still walk in procession. The king still holds court. But something has changed. The language of the tablets is shifting. Akkadian giving way to Aramaic, then to Greek. The once thriving scribal schools shrink. Ziggurats crumble at the corners. The canals clog with silt, untended. Merchants complain of poor harvests. Governors act more like kings. Kings act more like servants to foreign masters. By the time of the Persian conquest in 539 BCE, Babylon doesn't fall with screams. It falls with a treaty, a march, a door opened quietly at night. Cyrus the Great of Persia enters the city without a siege. The people welcome him, relieved, perhaps, that someone is still in charge. He promises to restore temples, respect customs, and he does, for a time. But the soul of Babylon is fragile now. It endures under the Persians, flickers under the Seleucids, struggles under Parthian and Roman shadows. Each new empire carves its initials into her stones. But Babylon's glory does not rise with him. Each emperor visits, loots, or ignores. Alexander the Great famously dreams of making Babylon his capital. He dies here instead, young, feverish, surrounded by squabbling generals. His body is placed in a gold sarcophagus. Only his legend does. By the 2nd century BCE, Babylon is mostly ruins. By the 1st century CE, Roman writers call it a ghost town. By the 7th century, it is buried in sand, remembered only in stories and scriptures. And yet Babylon never really dies. Its name becomes a symbol. In the Bible, it is sin and pride incarnate, a warning of arrogance punished by divine wrath. In Islamic traditions, it is a place of fallen angels. Some goats wander across the sand. A few tourists climb the reconstructed Gate of Ishtar. Its modern bricks, painted to mimic ancient glories. In Renaissance Europe, it is confusion, wealth, mystery. In modern times, it's both a curse and a dream. The Tower of Babel, the Hanging Gardens, the Whore of Babylon. All these echo from a place that, for centuries, was nothing but mud bricks and wind. You stand on the ruins now, thousands of years later. The modern village of Hilla sits nearby, its people speaking Arabic, unaware or perhaps quietly proud of what lies beneath their feet. The palace Saddam Hussein once tried to rebuild here lies abandoned. He had his name stamped on the new bricks, imitating Nebuchadnezzar. But his empire, too, has fallen. Babylon doesn't like to be imitated. And then the sun sets, and the desert cools, and the wind moves gently across the cracked soil. You pick up a small clay fragment, worn by time. On it, a faint imprint of wedge-shaped cuneiform. Just one word, maybe the name of a traitor, a god, a punishment, or a prayer. It's unreadable now, but it exists. That is Babylon's magic. Not that it conquered, not that it ruled, but that it wrote. And what it wrote, even in fragments, still whispers. Babylon was never meant to be eternal in stone. It was eternal in memory, in law, in the logic of cities, in the way humans organize, believe, betray, build, and hope. We don't live in Babylon anymore, but we live in what Babylon taught us, and in that way, quietly, undeniably. Even now, Babylon endures. You're in the middle of the city's hustle, but not for market day or a festival. You're here for justice. Babylon's legal system, like the bricks it was built on, is cold, firm, and oddly elegant. You notice how transactional everything feels. There's nuance too. laws about inheritance, divorce rights for women, even minimum wages for ox drivers. Historians still argue whether Hammurabi's laws were actually enforced as strictly as written, or if they were more like a moral performance, more symbolic than daily reality. If a man accuses another but can't prove it, he's punished. If a builder's house collapses and kills the owner's son, the builder's son is put to death. You quietly wonder if Babylon had decent contractors at all. Hammurabi's code greets you from a basalt monolith, carved with 282 laws and topped with a dramatic scene of the king receiving divine approval from Shamash, the sun god of justice. Instead, they might have served as propaganda. Look how just and wise our king is. Meanwhile, peasants got their justice the old-fashioned way, by bribing someone or complaining loudly until someone important got annoyed. It's both instruction manual and intimidation tool, sort of like the fine print on modern rental agreements, except here, breaking the terms might cost you an eye as you stand near the scribes, copying cases. But it's not all A for an severity. One fringe theory suggests the laws weren't even public for the common people to read after all. Literacy wasn't exactly widespread. Still, you can't help but admire the architecture of order here. There's a kind of sleepy logic to it. Babylon was a place that understood its people could be chaotic, messy, emotional, so it built a system to hold them in place, like sun-baked bricks in a wall. You drift into a quieter part of the city now, where the scent of incense curls out from open windows and soft chanting hums in the air. You've entered the world of Babylonian medicine, a world both strangely advanced and deeply superstitious. The ASU worked with herbs, ointments, and surprisingly accurate anatomical knowledge. Meanwhile, the Psipu, the exorcist, focused on spiritual afflictions. They'd diagnose you based on omens, stars, and possibly how many goats looked at you funny that day. Your stomach's been aching, so you consult a local ASU, a healer. He's mixing powders in a clay bowl with a stick, muttering something about demons in your liver. You were hoping for a nice herbal tea. Instead, he prescribes a curious mixture of licorice root, mashed dates, and of course cooked turtle shell. You're told to smear it on your stomach and sleep facing north. If true, that's certainly one way to absorb wisdom. Good luck. Babylonian medicine operated with two systems, and yet, amid the goat guts and incantations, there are glimpses of brilliance. They knew about blood circulation, understood how to stitch wounds, even practiced early forms of surgery. Clay tablets record symptom patterns that sound eerily modern: migraines, strokes, epilepsy. You realize that in Babylon, healing meant aligning the stars, appeasing the gods, and probably getting a rash in the process. Historians still argue whether these practices were scientific or just ritualized guesswork. Probably both. The fringe fact: some scholars believe Babylonian doctors used human skull fragments in medicine, not just symbolically, but physically, ground into powders. As the incense stings your nose and your ointment hardens into something resembling wall plaster. Tonight, the stars aren't just for lovers or poets. You're in the company of Babylonian astronomers, those robe-clad stargazers who watch the heavens not for beauty, but for meaning. Every sunrise, every eclipse, every twitch of Jupiter gets logged with the precision of a modern scientist. They believe the gods speak through the cosmos, and Babylon wants to listen. They invented a proto-horoscope system, not the cutesy "you're a Sagittarius." So avoid excess today stuff, but serious predictions. You start to feel the hush that ancient timekeepers must have known, the sense that even in chaos, the stars hold a pattern. If you're lucky, you might dream in Sumerian numerals tonight, based on the king's birthday, or omens in the moon as shadow. A few cuneiform tablets suggest personal horoscopes were a thing, but it was more about appeasing Marduk than manifesting good vibes. Their observatory is modest, just a mud brick rooftop, but the ambition here is sky high. These markers help shape calendars, crop cycles, even battle plans. Historians still argue whether Babylonian astronomy was truly scientific or just well-organized superstition. But when you see their math-based 60 calculations that still haunt our clocks, you start to respect the grind. You lie on your back, watching them sketch tiny notches on clay tablets. You learn the word ziku, a sacred point in the sky where stars rise vertically. One quirky tidbit, and the fringe theory: some researchers believe the famed Star of Bethlehem might have been predicted centuries earlier by Babylonian sky records. Coincidence or cosmic brag? As the night deepens and the constellations shimmer above, you awaken in the middle of something dramatic. Babylon is falling, but the cracks are starting to show. You wander through neighborhoods where irrigation canals are clogged, marketplaces echo with fewer voices, and temple offerings are, let's just say, less generous than usual. Well, not yet. The empire has stretched thin. The priests approve. The scribes adapt. Babylon doesn't burn, it absorbs the conqueror. Even as its power dissolves, administrators far from Babylon grow corrupt. It looks promising, likely all of the above. A common fringe theory says a massive drought hastened collapse, turning canal-fed fields into cracked earth. Until you realize fewer kids are enrolled now, literacy rates drop as central control weakens. Even the ziggurat seems to sag, as if mourning its fading relevance. Soldiers go unpaid, and the once vibrant trade routes are stifled by new powers rising: Assyria, Persia, and that persistent menace, time. You pass a schoolyard and see children scribbling cuneiform. Historians still argue what ultimately ended Babylon's golden age. Was it the Medes and Persians, internal decay, or just the classic case of imperial overreach? You hear whispers of a new king coming, Cyrus of Persia, and soon enough, his army strolls into Babylon, not with fire, but with clever politics. The dream ends not with screams, but a sigh. The bricks are still warm, but the voices behind them are already turning to myth. Now the streets are silent, not because it's late, but because Babylon has entered memory. Its colors have faded, the lions chipped, but there's a heartbeat still there. The empire might be dust, but the echo, eternal. You float through what remains: a few half-buried walls, shattered inscriptions, a once grand gate to nowhere. You recognize it, the Ishtar Gate. Babylon outlived its conquerors in the strangest way by becoming legend. Greek historians called it exotic, biblical texts called it wicked. Later empires stole its aesthetic. Even 20th century dictators tried to rebuild it, hoping some of its majesty would rub off. Maybe. But standing here, amid crumbled grandeur and desert wind, you know it mattered. Bricks and dreams. Just like the title said, historians still argue whether the myth of Babylon overshadowed its real achievements. One final quirky fact: Alexander the Great died here. Not in a glorious battle or regal court, but quietly, in a palace, possibly of malaria or poison or heartbreak. No one knows. Babylon took him, too. And the fringe whisper? Some archaeologists believe parts of Babylon lie beneath the modern city of Hilla, Iraq, untouched, undisturbed, still dreaming in clay. So you lie down one last time on this warm ground, soothed by the breath of history, and listen. The winds grow softer now, brushing across stones that once heard prayers, footsteps, and laughter. Each heartbeat echoes like a distant drum, a lullaby tapped out by scribes and sung by river reeds. The Euphrates hums in memory, not motion. Babylon sleeps again. The stars that once guided kings now blink softly above, unconcerned with borders or bloodlines. You are weightless in this dust, part dream, part history. Let the bricks hold your body, and let the dreams rise. Her towering walls no longer needed. No need to remember the name of that one god with 8 arms, or the king who loved canals more than people. Just peace and warmth, and the faint scent of old cedar wood lingering in the wind. Her markets gone quiet, her gods retired to the corners of forgotten texts. You feel your breath slow, drawn into the rhythm of ancient time. The lights of the ziggurat fade. Let yourself fall gently into that stillness. There's no judgment here. Tomorrow, Babylon will be just another page in another book. But tonight, she is yours, a cradle of curiosity, stone, and starlight. Let your mind drift. Sleep well, traveler. The past will be here when you wake.